If you fell into the Devonian Ocean 375 million years ago, the first thing you'd notice is the silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that tells you something nearby has stopped moving. The water is warm, dense with salt, darker than anything you've seen in a modern sea. Visibility drops fast. 10 feet below the surface, the light goes gray. 20 feet, it becomes shadow. And in that shadow, something is already calculating the distance between you and it. This was not a primitive ocean. That is the mistake people make when they imagine deep time. They picture emptiness, simple creatures, a world still figuring itself out. The Devonian Ocean had already figured itself out. For over 60 million years, it had been running the same experiment: take a warm, nutrient-rich sea, fill it with life at every depth, and then let competition do the rest. What that experiment produced was not simple. It was the most complete underwater arms race in the first half of Earth's history. And by 375 million years ago, it had produced monsters. The question was never whether something would find you in this water. The question was what order they would arrive in. Before the giants, the water column was already dangerous in ways that rewarded nothing small and slow. Cladocelache was one of the earliest true sharks to dominate an ocean ecosystem. Reaching lengths of nearly 6 feet or 1.8 meters, it was built differently from the sharks we know today. The fins were rigid, more like wings than the flexible structures modern sharks carry. The tail was deeply forked and symmetrical. Cladocelache didn't corner well. It didn't need to. It attacked from behind. Fossil evidence preserved in the stomach contents of larger Devonian predators shows Cladocelache prey swallowed tail first, meaning the shark approached from the rear and struck before the prey could register it was being targeted. The geometry of the attack eliminated the need for complex pursuit: find the angle, close the distance. It was a simple strategy in an ocean that rewarded simplicity when it worked. But Cladocelache wasn't the apex of this ecosystem. It wasn't even close. Hynerpeton had already made a decision that would change the planet. But before it walked away from the water permanently, its ancestors lived inside it, and the ocean they were escaping tells you exactly why leaving made evolutionary sense. The shallow coastal zones of the Devonian Sea were transition spaces, warm, oxygenated near the surface, filled with smaller fish and invertebrates. They were also hunting grounds for something that turned coastal water into a specific category of lethal. Hyneria linde was a lobe-finned fish reaching up to 5 meters in length. Not a shark, not a reptile. A fish, in the way the word fish stops meaning what you think it means when the animal in question is 5 meters long and has limb-like pectoral fins capable of pushing its front half out of shallow water to grab prey on the bank. Hyneria didn't just hunt in the water, it hunted the boundary between water and land. Fossil evidence suggests it lurked in shallow coastal areas and used its muscular paired fins to partially beach itself in pursuit of prey attempting to escape onto land. The same anatomical features that would eventually allow vertebrate life to colonize land were, in this animal, a weapon. An ambush tool pointed in both directions at once. Anything that tried to escape the ocean by crawling toward shore was not escaping. It was moving toward a different version of the same problem. Dunkleosteus torelli requires a separate category of description, not because of its size, though the size is relevant, not because of its speed, though the speed has been measured, because of what its jaws were. Dunkleosteus was an arthrodire placoderm, an armored fish with bone plating covering the front third of its body, including the skull. It reached lengths of 8 to 9 meters. Weight estimates range between 1,000 and 3,600 kilograms depending on the body reconstruction used. The range reflects genuine uncertainty about the tail and posterior body, which are rarely preserved in complete specimens. The jaws are not uncertain. Dunkleosteus had no teeth. What it had instead was a set of self-sharpening, bony blades formed from the skull and lower jaw plates. As the edges wore against each other, they maintained sharpness automatically, a biological system that eliminated the tooth replacement cycle every other predator in this ocean depended on. The jaw mechanics were measured in a 2006 biomechanical study. Opening time from closed to fully open was calculated at 20 milliseconds. The suction created during that opening was powerful enough to pull prey directly into the mouth from a distance. Closing time generated bite forces estimated between 4,400 and 7,400 newtons at the tip and over 55,000 newtons at the blade surfaces where the shearing actually occurred. For context, that shearing force exceeds the bite force of Tyrannosaurus rex. The prey it targeted included armored fish, ammonites, and other placoderms. The fossil record shows Dunkleosteus remains in partially digested boluses, meaning the animal consumed prey, processed what it could absorb, and regurgitated the armored portions it couldn't. In multiple fossil sites, these regurgitated masses are found clustered together. Dunkleosteus returned to the same feeding locations repeatedly. It had patterns, preferences. A predator operating with behavioral consistency in a food chain it had no reason to fear. Nothing in the Devonian Ocean has been identified as a regular predator of adult Dunkleosteus. That is what apex predation looks like at its most complete. The Devonian Ocean didn't end the way most people expect. It didn't end with a meteor. It didn't end with a volcanic eruption on the scale of the Permian event that came later. It ended slowly over several million years, in a process that remains one of the most debated extinction events in paleontological literature. The late Devonian extinction, sometimes called the Kellwasser event, eliminated approximately 75% of all species on Earth. Marine ecosystems were hit hardest. Reef systems that had taken millions of years to develop collapsed almost completely. The shallow coastal zones that had been the most productive hunting grounds in the ocean were the first to go. The leading hypotheses involve a combination of global cooling, ocean anoxia, meaning oxygen depletion in deep water, and the spread of land plants. As the first forests expanded across continents during this period, their roots broke down rock at unprecedented rates, releasing nutrients into river systems that flowed into coastal seas. Those nutrients fed algae blooms. The blooms consumed oxygen. The oxygen-depleted dead zones spread through the shallower parts of the ocean where most marine life was concentrated. Life didn't see it coming because it had no mechanism to see it coming. The food was always there, then it wasn't. The oxygen was always there, then it wasn't. Dunkleosteus, Hinaria, Cladocelastia. The entire architecture of predation this ocean had spent 60 million years constructing was disassembled not by something larger or faster, but by chemistry. By water that no longer held enough oxygen to sustain the metabolism of the animals built to dominate it. What survived were the things close to edges, the lobe-finned fish that had already been experimenting with shallow oxygen-poor water. The ancestors of the animals that would crawl onto land and eventually, over the next 375 million years, produce every vertebrate alive today, including you. The Devonian Ocean is not ancient history in the way we mean when we say that phrase casually. It is the direct precursor to everything that followed. The shark lineage that began in this water is the same lineage that produced every shark in every ocean today. The vertebrate body plan refined under Devonian predation pressure is the same body plan you are using right now to read these words. The arms race didn't end. It relocated. It changed medium from water to land and then back to water and then to air and then to every environment vertebrate life found a way into. Every predator that came after, Mosasaurus, Megalodon, Tyrannosaurus, every apex predator in the last 375 million years, was built on a foundation laid in a Devonian ocean most people have never heard of. There is one more thing the fossil record tells us about this ocean, something that doesn't fit neatly into the scientific literature but sits in the data if you look at it from the right angle. The Devonian ecosystem was more complex than it needed to be, predators more specialized than survival required, competition more intense than any single niche demanded. The system kept escalating past the point of necessity, past the point of efficiency, and into something that looked, across 60 million years of fossil evidence, less like optimization and more like obsession. The ocean kept building. It built until the chemistry changed and the building stopped. And then it started again somewhere else. It has never actually stopped. The water you're looking at today, any ocean, any sea, any lake deep enough to lose light at the bottom carries that same logic inside it. Something below the fading light has already calculated the distance. That was true 375 million years ago. The math hasn't changed.